Thank you so much for the introduction. And can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. And you can see my screen, just double checking.
I don't see your screen.
Oh, interesting.
Sorry to be a
Okay.
bummer.
Aha, I didn't click share. Now can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. So yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm really happy to be here. Uh, and yeah, I feel like I'm among friends and colleagues when I'm looking through the attendees section. So this is great and very well attended. So thank you so much. Trout Unlimited Canada, we're a national organization. For those of you who don't know, we have an office in Calgary and another in Guelph, Ontario. And we're really fortunate to have quite a broad base of members, supporters, and partners all across Canada, including volunteer chapters that are located in most of the major centers. We have 5 chapters in Alberta. So I encourage you, if you're interested in this type of work, to please get in touch and consider joining a chapter. I'm sure they'd be really glad to have you. So today I'm going to be talking about beavers and fish. And so first of all, I'm just going to try and give a quick kind of history of beavers in North America. And really, I think we need to start with the fur trade, which was, really the defining chapter for beavers and fish and people in North America. And this map, the kind of brown layer on the underneath is the current range of beaver. And all those little black dots are trading posts. And basically what I'm trying to show you with this picture is that there was beaver everywhere. So there was beaver in the prairies, there's beaver in the mountains, beaver in the foothills, there's beaver in the desert. There was beaver all over the place. And yeah, European settlers came and we turned them into hats. And we harvested a lot of these animals and not just beavers. I think there's some badger hanging on the wall in that picture and looks like a bear. So we kind of commodified these animals and we took them off the landscape in vast quantities. And really, this quote from Dr. Sherry Westbrook, who's kind of a beaver legend here in Alberta, just like underscoring that there is beaver in almost every headwater stream. So that is something that's really hard for us to conceptualize, and that's certainly not the picture we have today. And at the same time, there was a lot of fish. So fish and beaver were living together in high densities, much higher than we're used to seeing today. That top picture is me and some of my friends in their early 20s fishing on Trout Creek. And yeah, there's a stringers of cutthroat trout. This is also Trout Creek in the bottom image. This is a tributary today. The fish are gone. And the beavers are gone for the most part as well. And some of these little quotes on the right-hand side of the screen are really cool to think about, just kind of like challenging our notion of what is normal today. So things like beavers are numerous in this upper part of the stream. This is talking about Trout Creek, a beautiful trout stream flowing through rich land and highly productive. Yeah, bull trout are gone from here, and West cutthroat trout are really close to gone or will be gone in the next few years if we don't do something pretty serious here. So it challenges us to ask, like, what is normal? Is that top picture normal? It's probably more normal than the bottom picture, but the bottom picture is what we see a lot more often. And this quote by Francis Backhouse is from a Reimagining Beaver article that came out in 2015. It's a really good read. And really, it's talking about ecological amnesia and how, for most of us settler people, we moved and lived here in an era when the beaver was already gone. So yeah, we have a skewed image. And you can tell that we have forgotten because we do things like this. We build neighborhoods like, I think this is Cranston along the bow. So we've diverted a little creek right into the middle of the neighborhood. And then now we're going to have some beaver problems because we've got, some culverts and we got houses backing onto the little creek here. So, I mean, we kind of have just forgotten what a riverscape is and the processes that are happening there. So things have changed a lot. So following the fur trade, trapping kind of fell off. In some cases, it was basically scorched earth. So there was efforts to just get rid of the fur bearers to prevent competitors from moving in. And in some cases, we actually went backwards and we started putting beaver out on the landscape. So yes, beavers really were parachuted. And this little quote in the bottom of the cartoon beaver dams in the mountains save water for fish, wildlife, and agriculture. That's like a key takeaway. That, I mean, we're still kind of trying to expound this today. And really another interesting stat is that today we probably have like less than 3% of the historical population of beaver that were here prior to the fur trade. So we don't have like more beaver than ever, even though they are making a comeback. And this creek I stole from a presentation by my colleague Jack Imhoff, and it's an old cartoon, but I mean, we're still talking about these same messages today. So yeah, the bottom image, you can see it's just kind of like a simplified, incised, degraded stream. And some of the momentum continues with, on a positive note, you know, we've come a long way from trapping and killing all the beavers to parachuting beavers to coexistence with beavers. And there's some great resources out there from partner organizations like Mistaki Institute and Cows and Fish, like the Working with Beavers website. And yeah, there's even, I went on there today and there's even a cost calculator for pond levelers and coexistence tools. So there's some really cool resources out there available to anybody. So are beavers bad for fish? No, they're not. And yeah, so that'll conclude my talk. Thank you so much. No, I'm kidding. So obviously, really, it's the answer is no, because the question is not really, it's like, are fires bad for the forest? Well, I mean, that's not a yes or no answer. Are floods bad for the river? It depends. First, we need to kind of ask, like, what is bad? What do we even mean by that? And there's a lot of questions. Only one of these questions that's making up this dam of questions is a yes, no question. That's, do beavers eat fish? No, they don't. But I mean, there's so much other questions that take a lot of time and explanation to unpack. And another question, which sounds like a really stupid question, is what is a fish? You might think of some things when you think of fish. I might think of some different animals when I think of fish, but historically, fish in a management context pretty much meant trout, and to a lesser extent, pike and walleye in this part of the world. And really, it's not just trout, it was usually one of these three. So brook trout, brown trout, and rainbow trout were kind of the big three. And so that kind of further complicates some of these questions. Ecologically speaking, a fish is a fish, right? So this is like kind of continuing down this silly question, but these are all fish and these are all animals that are, I mean, some of these are probably thrilled that the stream is no longer flowing and now it's a beaver complex. The picture in the bottom right, that's some cool fathead minnows. They're laying their eggs right on the bottom side of a beaver chewed stick. So if you ask them, I mean, they're probably loving the beavers in this context. And just to plug that, if you're interested in learning more about native fish, you should get this book from the library. It's awesome. So all of these notions kind of add a lot of complexity to what we thought was a really simple question. And partly it's because we tend to manage species and not ecosystems. So real or even perceived impacts on species that are economically or socially important can take precedence in certain circumstances. And some of these questions I just put here as sort of like theoretical arguments, you know, that you could make from a fish kind of evangelist standpoint, like, you know, maybe it doesn't matter if trout can migrate upstream here this year, or this habitat's more important for sucker. I mean, this is like, haha, in a lot of contexts, but I mean, maybe these aren't so silly notions. And then to make it more complicated, when we're talking about beaver activity, we're usually thinking about building dams, felling trees, excavating channels, maybe building their food caches, but there's pond creation, dam failure, changes the stream temperature, habitat diversity, overwintering habitat. Beaver ponds are a great overwintering habitat. Sediment transport. I mean, there's like a million different things that are going on that beaver are having an influence on. And they're all interconnected. They influence one another. They're working at different scales and time series. And it's just like, oh my God, how are we going to answer this question? And then make it even more complicated, what is even a beaver dam, or what does beaver activity look like on the landscape? So it's just like a mess. There's a dam pool, there's flooding, there's some groundwater stuff going on that we can't even see. So yeah, really it's just like a lot of different processes and impacts going on. And you can really kind of see how this would happen when you look from above. So as we may know, beavers are ecosystem engineers. And so really what they're doing is they're taking these really simple habitats and they're transforming them into these complex, messy systems with all kinds of different flow paths and depths and water speeds. And so really they're like agents of change. So, okay, what is like some of the science telling us when it comes to the beaver and trout question? So there are lots and lots and lots of papers, like most of which I can't even touch on today, but there are some kind of key findings with regards to flow, temperature, fish passage, and habitat. And really they kind of fall into some big themes. So the green boxes especially are ones that is like pretty clear, it seems, across a whole bunch of research, is that beaver dams attenuate flows. So that just means that flooding happens at a less severe extent, and the time it takes that flood water to go through the system is extended, so it's moving slower through. And the same goes for droughts and low water. And beavers are really generating a lot of habitat heterogeneity, and that just means complexity. So they're making simple systems more messy. All the stuff about fish passage and temperature and flow, there's very context specific. So at each place and site and flow and time of year and size, there's going to be differences here. And some of those differences I think would do well to embrace uncertainty. And really what makes a stream healthy for the native trout? So I'm sure some of us have heard of the 4 Cs, so cold, clean, complex, and connected. And you might think that's a weird picture to choose for connected. But really, I think it's the perfect picture, because historically, we have really thought about connectivity as just along a stream. So what can go from one place to another along a stream? And really what we're starting to do in river restoration and stream corridor ecology is think about, how is a river connected to its floodplain? So how are all of these upland and riparian processes linked to all these aquatic processes? So how are the trees and shrubs and their life cycles impacting the water, and vice versa? And this image is a good one because we actually have some bull trout movement studies going on, and a bull trout swam right through this dam last September. So these are kind of some horandograms, so you don't need to look too closely here, but basically what I'm trying to show you is that streams are on sort of a circular evolutionary path. So they are always changing states in different speeds. But basically what I'm trying to illustrate here is that the stream on the left is really simple, and accordingly it has not a lot of habitat, and the habitat that it has is pretty simple. There's not a lot of it, and the attributes of that habitat are pretty simple. So it's like a simple low habitat kind of scenario. On the right, there's a lot of structure. It's really messy. There's a lot more habitat and a lot more habitat types. Looking at it from more of a, I guess, intuitive sense, this is a good graphic, moving from like a dry, degraded, simple stream channel with a single thread to a more complex beaver influence system. And you can see that it just, I mean, it looks like a mess, but there's so many different little microhabitats and niches. And so, streams were probably ebbing and flowing between states all in the spectrum before we took some of these engineers off the landscape. So getting into the concept of beaver restoration, it's a really exciting thing. I'm working in this field right now, and I'm pretty fired up about it. So I'm gonna have to check some of my biases here, but importantly, maybe this is a lesson for me as well, is that it's not a tool for everywhere all the time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This picture here, it looks messy. There's flooded trees. I don't even know where the channel is. Awesome. Just like leave it alone. But there's a lot of places that are really broken and they could use some fixing. So this is a perfect example. It used to be a West Slope cutthroat trout stream. This might be a good place for beaver restoration. And really, when we're doing beaver restoration, we're talking about role playing as beavers. So a lot of the places where we're doing this work, there used to be a lot of beavers, which earlier I mentioned was a lot of places. The little blue blobs here are old beaver ponds. And this is a stream that now dries up and the fish are pretty much gone. So the beavers left, the stream got dry, got simple, it's degraded, and the fish are gone. This is what it looks like. It's the same picture from an earlier slide. So this was a good candidate to do beaver restoration at. So here we are building what's called a beaver dam analog. So basically a mock beaver dam. So we're putting in some vertical posts. They're untreated, they're just pine posts. And this is kind of the end result. So that's our best imitation of a beaver dam. And really the stamp of gold approval, I guess, here would be some beavers come back to this site and take it over, and we can defer decision making to the system. So we can kind of take our hands off of this and let some of those processes continue on naturally. And here's some happy people with their completed beaver dam analog. And really, there's a lot of real estate out there to be doing this stuff at. I mean, this is a common site. It's all over the place. There's probably 100 little headwater creeks look like this in the forest reserve. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of examples of incised, dried up, simplified stream channels that used to have fish. So really, like, the world is your oyster. There's all kinds of good spots to be doing some of this stuff. This is actually a tributary of Rocky Creek. Used to be a quad trail. Here's another one. Lots of real estate. And linking this right back to one of the first slides, does this not look like that cartoon image? It's like a spitting image. And this is 1947. So really today we're just still trying to connect some of these learnings and use some new tools. And I think beaver restoration would be a good tool to use. And on that note, there's some great resources out there. There's a whole manual for this kind of stuff. And it's really exciting because all this work is done by just people power. So yeah, and we're hosting a workshop in May, so you should check that out as well. And that's all. Thank you. There I am beside a beaver dam.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellie.